And now I am pleased to welcome a Swedish historian and biographer to the show Timeless, Carl Magnus Palm. He is the author of this book on ABBA called Bright Lights and Dark Shadows. I read this book in 2 sittings. It was so riveting. And like so many stories of famous musicians and bands, the story of ABBA is filled with overbearing managers, fights, heartbreak, fame, tragedy, dating, marriages, and even in this case, some royalty. Carl Magnus Palm, hello. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. It's an honor to have you here, and I'd like to tell the audience that he is in Sweden right now, and it is quite late for you. So I am especially grateful that you've taken the time to be with us today.
Well, hi, Julie. My pleasure to be on the show. I'll do anything for ABBA.
That is clear. Mr. Palm has dedicated his whole career to biographing, if that's even a word, ABBA. And this book that I have here on the desk and that I read and that we're discussing today is just one of many books and articles that Mr. Palm has written about ABBA. So I'm truly in the presence of an expert. And so to start out, I mentioned to Mr. Palm before the show that I interviewed David Leaf, who is the biographer of the Beach Boys. And I said that I read his book, and when I interviewed him, I just immediately dove into some of the details of the book. And I wish that I had sort of asked some more basic questions for the benefit of the audience. So I'm going to change course a little bit here in this interview and do that. So Mr. Palm, could you define ABBA? Who are the members? When did they form? And what are sort of the different roles of each individual within the group?
Well, ABBA consists of 4 people. It's the core members, if you will, are Bjorn and Benny, Bjorn Ulvaeus and Benny Andersson, who met in the 1960s when they were both members of other bands in Sweden who were very successful at the time. And they connected, and they felt, this guy likes writing songs, I like writing songs, we should get together and try to write a song, which they did, and they became good friends in the mid-60s. And then a few years later, in 1969, Bjorn met Agneta Fältskog, who was also a successful performer, singer, solo artist, and songwriter. She was only 17 years old when she had a breakthrough with a song she had written herself, which doesn't sound like a big deal today, maybe, but back in the 60s, let me tell you, that was very unusual. And then Benny, at the same time, met Annie Fridlingstad, who's better known as Frida, who was a performer as well. She was singing more like she was doing cabaret. She was singing old, the Great American Songbook, old standards and things like that. And they were all busy with whatever they were doing individually, basically. But to sort of get to the to the ABBA point, in 1972, they recorded their first song together, which was called People Need Love. At the time, they called themselves Bjorn and Benny, Agneta and Annifrid, which, as you can, just hearing the name, you get like your tongue starts to twist, I think. So eventually they got the name ABBA, and the reason they started working together was that Bjorn and Benny and their manager Stig Anderson, they had a dream which was very unusual at the time, to try to reach outside Sweden with English language pop music. You have to go back 50 years now and sort of realize that at that time it was like impossible almost, but they had this dream and they wanted to try it. These ladies were excellent singers. They were in relationships with them, and they felt, okay, let's try this, and that's how ABBA started.
And what does ABBA stand for, or is there a meaning of the term ABBA?
There is, yes. It's there again. Their manager Stig Anderson, he got fed up having to say that group name. Bjorn and Benny, Agneta, Annifrid. Bjorn and Benny, Agneta. It's just like takes forever. So he just moved around the initials of their, Christian names. So ABBA, A for Agneta, B for Bjorn, B for Benny, and A for Annifrid. That became ABBA, ABBA. And he started saying that just as a joke when he was talking to the media, or like he was writing a memo for the other people in his office or something. Because in Sweden, there is a canned fish company called ABBA, long established. And so it was a bit of a joke at first, but then he said, that's a really good name. You can say it in any language. You can pronounce it, you know, ABBA, as we say in Sweden, or you can say ABBA, as they say in Great Britain, or ABBA, as you say in the United States, or, whatever else. It's easy and good. And they were like, but people will think of canned fish when they listen to our music. I don't think we don't think that's a very good idea. But he said, well, that's only here in Sweden. No one knows about ABBA Canned Fish Company. So eventually, no one could think of a better name, and that's why they settled on ABBA.
That's true. Prior to reading your work, I never knew that there was a canned fish company in Sweden named ABBA. And now I'm sure that the canned fish company is upset with ABBA because they've stolen their thunder.
Yeah, in a way, they become the more famous ABBA. And the
Yes.
funny thing is that when when ABBA the pop group took that name, they contacted the canned fish factory and said, "Is it okay with you if we use this?" And they say, "Yeah, as long as you don't um, drag our name in the mud or anything, or do anything, bad, it's all right." And obviously it turned out to be beneficial for both parties, because I think you know it's probably been good promotion for canned fish ABBA to share the name with this world famous pop group.
What was it about the 60s, do you think, that made a band like ABBA possible? Or maybe that's too much of a leading question. Maybe there wasn't anything about the 60s, but I just was quickly jotting down as you were speaking. It occurred to me that the Rolling Stones came together in the 60s and 70s. And by the way, ABBA was officially formed in 1972, but as you were saying, Mr. Palm, some of the members met earlier in the 60s. The Rolling Stones came together during that time, the Beach Boys, the Beatles, and ABBA. I mean, those are four pretty big, worldwide known bands. Was there something about that time that sort of facilitated those groups' rise, or do you think it was just pure coincidence and luck? Because I can't think of any decade before or since that had such a burst onto the scene of musical magic.
Well, I think part of the answer to that question, and something that unifies or unites all the bands you named, um, is that in the 1960s, and especially with the Beatles, the breakthrough of the Beatles, it became the norm that the bands should write their own songs. Because prior to that, you had professional songwriters, and then you had the artists who performed the songs. It was like two different separate entities. But now it became a thing of self-expression. If you wanted to be taken seriously, you should write your own songs and be the the originator in every sense of the word of your music. So I think that's what those all of those bands have in common, that they recognized that, and they took charge of their own music, instead of being like, you have a producer who finds a song and then gives it to the artist. No, you had the a complete package with these bands.
That's a very good point. And something else that I really learned during my interview with Mr. Leaf about the Beach Boys is that a lot of the formations of these bands were in response to certain historical developments of their time. I mean, I think that's true of art in general, not just pertaining to music, but paintings and sculpture. Art is a reflection of the time. And, the Beach Boys started off singing about this California myth. This was, during the time of the Vietnam War in the United States, and it was after World War II, and we had sort of had a period of peace and prosperity, and then we were sort of in another war, and the Beach Boys sung originally about the land of California being a land of freedom for people to kind of have adventure and hold on to that nostalgic, peaceful, united idea of America. And, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, of course, were responses to changing British sensibilities. So what was the history or sort of the culture of Sweden during the time that ABBA came together? And do you think that their ascent had to do with the way that they may have responded to some of those cultural developments? Or was ABBA sort of the opposite, where ABBA just provided you with really great, welcoming music as an escape from some of the more poignant cultural commentaries of the time?
Well, more the latter, I think. They were more of an escape because everything got really, really, towards the late 60s and the early 70s, things got really politicized in popular music, or at least in shall we say the rock and roll part of popular music. And the ABBA members, they came from another tradition. They felt like, well, music is about entertaining, to make you feel good, and so that was the only thing they wanted to do, really. And in Sweden, they were heavily criticized for that. I mean, the Swedes in general loved ABBA. There's no doubt about that. No one sold more records than ABBA in the 1970s in Sweden. But there were cultural commentators and other people who felt like, oh, you're not singing about anything that's relevant. You're just singing about relationships and love, and you have bubblegum song titles like, Bang a Boomerang or Honey Honey or Ring Ring or Dum Dum Diddle or whatever else. And that was regarded as not good enough. But eventually ABBA got more personal as well, I think, but they never really got into politics except at the very end of the career. Maybe they were singing about the Cold War a bit, but
Mm-hmm.
apart from that, ABBA were really about the joy of music and nothing else.
One of the things, if you don't mind me repeating, that Mr. Palm said to me before the interview, and I thought it was so spot on, is that ABBA's music is so welcoming, and it's not demanding in the sense that it expects you to sort of live up to certain standards of music. And certainly ABBA, holds and exemplifies those standards of music. I mean, it's masterful work. But there really is this, as you said, welcoming, warm, inviting spirit and tone to ABBA that is apolitical, in addition to not being demanding in terms of having you try to understand or live up to the musical forms. So before, I started off the interview by asking you about the members of ABBA. If you don't mind, let's go through the acronym, if you will. Would you mind telling me a little bit more about each of those individuals and in more detail, and their specific talents, and a bit about their personalities as well?
Right. Well, Bjorn Bjorn Ulvaeus is one half of the songwriting team with Benny. They wrote the songs together, and during the course of the ABBA the ABBA years, it transpired that Bjorn was the better lyricist, so he took more responsibility for that. And he in the beginning he was like, oh, lyrics, yeah, we need words to sing, but it doesn't really matter what they're about, it's just words. But then later on he felt like, well, actually, if I'm going to write these lyrics, I might as well regard it as a really interesting challenge rather than as a chore. So he was, and as for his personality, I think it's just like all the members of ABBA, kind of down to earth, and they were never, no one in ABBA was ever really like behaving like a star, if you will. They didn't have 10 bodyguards or anything like that. They would just, they would, if they met you, they would just, oh, hi Julie, how are you, da da da. They wouldn't be standoffish or anything like that. Then we have Benny Andersson, who is the musical genius in the band. I mean, Bjorn contributed musically as well, but Benny was always the big musical motor, if you will, of ABBA. And for him, music was everything. It was from the moment he started playing the piano at age 10, and he'd played the accordion before that. uh, he claims that he's been playing the piano every day since he was 10 years old, which is amazing. He's just through and through music, and also a very down to earth kind of personality, not and very warm, and more maybe in that partnership, in that Bjorn and Benny partnership, he's more, Bjorn was the one who tended to worry about things like, oh, is this going to work, how's this, worrying about going on stage, whereas Benny has always been the more relaxed, oh yeah, it's going to work out fine, we're prepared, it's fine. And then you have the two ladies, Agneta, who is the kind of, well, her persona in ABBA became like the queen of heartbreak, because she sang all these songs, like these really sad songs like SOS and The Winner Takes It All, and that kind of thing. um she I mean, she also loved music from a very early age. She started playing the piano when she was 5 or 6 or something, and wrote her first song at age 6, and wrote songs as a teenager. So for her, it was also, music was the all important thing. I think maybe it became a bit problematic for her that ABBA became so big, and so popular. So I think maybe she got a bit more fame than she had bargained for. Um, for Frida, it was, she maybe was the one who went through the biggest transformation as a result of being a member of ABBA. She had also, started with music when she was a young child, and she had for 10 years, from the age of 13 to 23 or something, she was singing in dance bands, and just, singing and singing and performing, but without really getting anywhere. And even after her breakthrough in the late 60s, it would take a few years before she really felt comfortable as a stage artist. She always had a great voice, but she wasn't really someone who communicated with an audience really well as a performer. But then all of a sudden she went through this transformation, and as it turned out, she was the one in ABBA who felt most comfortable on stage, and really loved being there, and really got a kick out of the communication with the audience. So that kind of sums up a bit of who they were, and what roles they played in the band.
One of the main things that I got from your book, which really impressed me, was what you said at the beginning, that they sort of didn't have a diva complex almost. That we see, I mean, certainly in American culture, we have a big culture of celebrity and fame, and we idolize people in the public eye. Do you think that Swedish culture with regard to fame and success is a little different, and that may have informed the ABBA's comparative lack of quote unquote diva complex? Or do you think it was something innate about the members that precluded them from becoming hotheads? Because it really is remarkable that they have sort of steered clear of some of the traps of fame that we see a lot of other people of their caliber getting into.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely part of Swedish culture not to become big-headed just because you're famous. Of course, you can't be completely unaffected by being famous on that level, because it's just impossible to avoid that. But having said that, they never really behaved like divas. Everyone I've talked to who had anything to do with them always said, "Oh, they were so down to earth." And, people from record companies in other countries came to Sweden, and they went out dancing with ABBA. I was like, what? They went out clubbing with ABBA. That would never have happened with British stars or American stars. But it is in Sweden historically. I don't know how it is today. Maybe we're getting more international, more American, or whatever in our attitudes to stardom. But historically, it has always been like, even if you're a big star in Sweden, you shouldn't really behave like like uh, like you're so much better or so much more exclusive or so than anyone else. And that was the culture within ABBA's record company. And they just treated the staff like, okay, we happen to be the people who write and perform this music, but you also have an important job to do, because you send out all these press releases, and you run errands, and you do this. And everyone was just one big family. And I think that really helped them. I mean, like you said, they haven't really succumbed to any of the trappings of fame. And they're all in their 70s now, and all four ABBA members are still alive. And that will
Yes.
tell you something, because there's always, out of all those legendary bands, there's always someone who did too many drugs or whatever else and died along the way. Not so with ABBA. And that's more or less unique.
And two are married. How about that?
Yeah, yeah. They they were married to each other, and then they managed to get through their divorces. And they are, everyone is
Amicable.
happy today. Yeah, exactly. Everything has worked out fine. It wasn't their recent reunion wasn't about, oh, we need the money, so we're going to do this. They wouldn't have done it if they didn't get along as people, and they really do. The divorces happened, and obviously it was a bit tense for a few years after that, but they still work together. And now it's like 4 decades later, so there's no reason to be for animosity. And they didn't divorce because they hated each other. It's just incompatibility, if that's the right word, as people, in a marriage. But that doesn't mean that they couldn't remain friends.
Do you think that they got, I mean, it's so hard to get into someone's personal life and know why two people got married, but do you think that they got married because they were in this sort of like rarefied situation and world, both being members of this internationally famous band? Or, in other words, do you think it was sort of the psychology of being in this shared experience together that may have brought them into marriage? Or was it just they were truly in love? And
I think more truly in love, because the marriages and the relationships as such um, began before ABBA existed. They hadn't really planned on working together when the romantic relationship started, because Agneta and Frida, they had their own separate careers, and Bjorn and Benny were working as producers, and they had their own duo, releasing records from time to time. And they felt, well, maybe it's not such a good thing to work together because we live together, and then to work together, that might be a bit much. And they tried it before ABBA, and it didn't really work out so well for them. So they thought, let's not do that. So um, it was they so the marriages, and this thing that they happened to be married when ABBA started, it was just coincidence, however strange it may sound. Obviously, it's not coincidence that people in the music business meet each other when they're on tour or when they're doing something, on the same television special or whatever. So that's not coincidence, but it's not, it's like, oh, you meet and fall in love with someone at work. That happens, and if in their case it happened to be they were all in show business.
I had forgotten that they were married before. I thought that they got married during the time of ABBA, but you would know.
Yeah,
You're the expert.
yeah. Bjorn and Agneta, they got married the year before ABBA started, and Benny and Frida, they lived together for a long time, and then they didn't get married until 1978. But they lived as husband and wife, and the reason they put off the marriage so long was because they were so busy with ABBA, and they
Right.
didn't have time to have a proper wedding.
So let's get into some of the songs. And unfortunately, I can't play the songs on the show because we don't have licensing to them. And YouTube will take us down if we play them. But I am confident that members of the audience can hear it in their heads because these songs are so famous and so fun. So I wrote down some of my favorite songs, and I think they are the most famous songs of ABBA. Dancing Queen, Gimme Gimme, which is the opening of this show, Timeless. It's a Dua Lipa and Gimme Gimme mashup. And I specifically chose that because I adore ABBA. Fernando, oh, I love that
Yeah.
song, Fernando. There was something in the air that night. Okay, Waterloo is another great one. Does Your Mother Know? Take a Chance on Me. So those 6 songs, first of all, would you agree that those are probably the 6 most famous of ABBA?
Yeah, they would be among the most famous. Maybe you should throw in The Winner Takes It All as well,
Yeah, that's true.
if you didn't mention that. Yeah. But then yeah, that's pretty much it. Mamma Mia. I'm not sure if you mentioned Mamma Mia.
I did
But
not.
that's the problem. That's the problem with ABBA. They have so many songs that are famous.
Yes.
They had so many hits. But your 6 songs is a very good start for sure.
And so with those 6 songs, all of them were in Mamma Mia, and frankly, that's how I knew ABBA was by listening, was by watching the movie and hearing the songs. And uh, forgive me if you or any members of ABBA who may be listening. That's pretty presumptuous to think they may be listening. I hope. And by the way, if you are listening, I'd love to go clubbing and dancing with you. That was amazing when you mentioned that. Um, so I really thought growing up that ABBA was just, I don't know, made those songs for Mamma Mia, or Mamma Mia sort of hired ABBA for those songs. Forgive me, ABBA, I didn't realize that they had other songs that were famous outside of Mamma Mia. So Mamma Mia, I think, really did kind of bring them to another level. Can you talk about the circumstances surrounding Mamma Mia and using the songs in the movie?
Yeah. Well, Mamma Mia started as a stage musical in 1999 in the UK, and then that became a bigger hit than anyone had dared hope for. And then it came to Canada, it came to the United States, and all of a sudden it was all over the world, in Sweden, in South Korea, in Japan, everywhere. And then in 2008 there was the movie, and but the musical, there was a producer, a lady producer in the UK called Judy Kramer, who had this idea that there must be a way to take the old ABBA songs and put them into a musical context, to write like a book, as you say in the musical world, a manuscript that kind of could where you could use the songs and it made sense. And there was this other lady called Catherine Johnson, and she wrote the book for the musical. And it turned out, okay, she found a way to do that with this young girl who's going to get married, and there are three men who could all be her father, and there's this meeting with her mother and everything. Um, so that's how it all came about. I think the ABBA members, or Bjorn and Benny in particular, were kind of skeptical at first, like, is this really going to work? And, we don't want our songs to be dragged in the mud or anything like that.
Right.
Or, they were a bit wary. But then it became a big thing. And it's very interesting, as you yourself is you are a testament to that, because the musical has really brought ABBA's music to younger generations who weren't even born when ABBA broke up, like I don't think you were. And so it's been an amazing thing for the legacy of ABBA. It gave the songs a new lease of life. You could use them in another context. People could get acquainted with them, and then they would be interested. Well, who are this ABBA group? Who are they, and what do the original versions sound like, and so on. And then you go on a journey of discovery, and it's fantastic.
This is one of the hardest probably questions to answer, excuse me, but I know that it's also your life's work to answer this question. What do you think it is about ABBA's music that has made it so revolutionary and successful? I mentioned what you said to me before, which really resonated with me about its warm and welcoming and inviting nature. But, feel free to get into more specifics if you wish of certain musical techniques or singing techniques that you'd like to highlight. I want to understand what their secret sauce is, because there is something undeniably different and transcendent and elevating about their music.
Well, yeah, it is a difficult question to answer, because it's just, how do you quantify uh, emotional connection?
Right.
I think it's just they were always very honest with themselves in terms of making music. And it is the sheer joy of the music. Even when the songs are sad, there's a lot of energy in them. So I think people respond to that, for one thing. And also they worked so hard on those songs, sometimes some certain kind of pop music, they will write a great chorus, and then they think, oh, now we have a great chorus, so the verses, the rest of the song, it doesn't really matter, because all people will be interested in is the chorus. But ABBA, they said, no, no, no. Every part of the song has to be strong and solid and musically interesting. So they could work for weeks on just one of the same song, just writing the song. And then in the studio, they took such great care making everything, okay, is there anything we could add here? Or maybe we should take away that. And then on top of that, you have these wonderful singers in Agneta and Frida, which they're individually they're great, but when they come together and you add layers and layers and layers and layers of vocals of them together singing together, then it gets magic, and you get what people sometimes call the third voice of ABBA. It comes like a third unique voice separate to the two voices. um, so all of that is just, yeah, it's just the sheer brilliance of it. You could say that about many many acts, I guess, but I think it's just the secret of ABBA is it's just it, what I get from them is the joy. If I should sort of if I should bring it down to one sentence or one phrase, it's just the sheer joy of making music. I think that's what you hear in almost every ABBA song.
Absolutely. And that's again probably what precluded them from going down some dark paths that other musicians have succumbed to, because it always came back to the joy of producing the music. So finally, we're out of time, and I want to let you go to sleep because again, it's so late there, and I'm so appreciative of the time that you've given to me so far. How are they all today? And I asked you before the show, do you see them? Do you talk to them? I mean, you're their guru, you're their biographer. So what's your relationship like with them?
Well, I don't really see them regularly or anything like that, or have any regular contact with them. But from time to time, I'm working on a project and I might need some help from them. And it happens sometimes, that they contact me. I might get a phone call from Bjorn or Benny, or an email, and because artists, what they will do is they will do their thing. They will do, like, an album or a song or whatever, and then they'll move on to the next thing. They don't sit down and catalog their life like someone like me does. So they might contact me and say, "Oh, when which year did we do that tour? Oh, okay. So, and when did we record that song?" And just because they need that for something that they're working on. Um, but and so I don't really hang out with the ABBA members, and I don't think I should, because I'm their chronicler and I sort of study their lives. So it would be unhealthy for me to get too close to them in that sense. I think that all four ABBA members seem to be in a really good place today. They seem to be very happy with their lives, and content, and just living as normally as you can when you are famous on that level. And I think they're doing a pretty good job of it, actually.
I mentioned that was the last question, but I realized that I didn't ask arguably the most important question of all in this interview. How did you become their biographer?
Well, it is a long story. I'll try to be brief. It's just I was at a certain point in my life about 30 years ago, and I was thinking, what would I like to do? Well, I would like to write about music, but I didn't want to become like a regular music journalist or anything like that. So I thought, well, I'd like to do in-depth study of a band. And I'm in Sweden. I loved ABBA, and I realized, well, there are really no good books about them out there. So I just started doing in-depth research, chronicling their lives and their careers, and trying to find out facts about their music, etc., etc. And it turned out, I did a book just about their music and nothing else. That was my first ABBA book. And then it turned out that there was a need for someone like me who was interested in keeping track of ABBA, and knowing all the facts. And I got all these offers. Well, would you like to write a biography? Yes, please, I'll do that. And, we're going to open a museum here in Stockholm about ABBA. Would you like to help out with that? Yes, sure. And all these other things. And it just went on and on and on. And it became a profession and a career, which is just it's just mind-boggling to me, but I'm obviously very happy about it.
Well, I am very happy about it too. Thank you again so much for taking the time to be here. And as a reminder to everyone, the book is called Bright Lights and Dark Shadows, though there are many other books, as Mr. Palm just mentioned, that you can read, and I will certainly be reading them myself. I hope to be able to interview you again in the future, and please take
I
care. Thank you. And tell ABBA
I hope so
again.
too.
Tell ABBA again if they need a clubbing or a dancing partner, a girl in the States who will fly across the pond gladly to be with them.
I'll let them know.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Julie.
Thanks for watching today. And